Well, it's a good thing to see you here today, and we're excited. Yet another conversation that we seek to bring out every single day. And if you haven't yet subscribed, you should. And if you haven't yet liked, you should like it. With me today, I am joined by a brother in the Lord, and we'll get to know him much more, but also engage in a few matters here and there. The one speaking, I am Boboto, and behind the scenes, we want to say thank you to Peter, who's behind the scenes. Ramaya is behind the scenes. Sami is also there. Bruno just walked into the room, holding some cup, and yeah, we're just chilling. We're here, dividing the word of the Lord, eating some bread, but also building up the most holy faith that we've been called into. And so, Kimo,
Yes, sir.
good to see you, man.
Good to see you, my brother.
In as much as you were not informed about this situation,
Yes.
you suddenly became a part of it.
I thank God. I thank God. Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm grateful for the opportunity.
yeah.
Yes.
And now, I know I've also not given you a debrief on what we should talk about, but there are a lot of things in my head running right now. And one of the things I was talking to Peter
Mm.
some few days ago is how that different people come to encounter the Lord. And Peter personally has mentioned some of his story how he encountered the Lord, and from that day he never remained the same.
Yeah.
And so in this conversation, this will be a part of the series that we call the encounters.
Yeah.
The encounters are simply retelling of people's experiences with God. And one of the first experiences or encounters that usually people have is the salvation journey.
Yes.
What happened? How did you get here?
Wow. Very long story, but
I am willing to hear the long story, by the way.
yes.
Yes.
And you can see how God is good
Yeah.
and how He can bring a man from somewhere that he did not expect and place him in another place.
Yeah.
My story, for me, actually, I do not believe that I will reach this far, especially in the Lord.
Mm.
And the reason I'm saying this is based on what I've been seeing.
Yeah.
A lot of my peers, a lot of people who have been in faith ahead of me, they enter into the faith but are not consistent.
Mm.
And one way or another, there's something that usually happens along the way that
Mm.
they fall out of the faith.
Yeah.
And so I saw this was the pattern. And I was like, so if I become a Christian, this is the same thing that is going to happen to me.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, so if this is Christianity, then
Mm.
I don't want to, I don't want to gamble on
You
something
don't want to enter and then fall back.
and
again.
fall back. Yes.
Yeah.
And so things change when you find the truth for yourself. The Bible says that you shall know the truth and the truth shall set you free.
Mm.
Jesus Christ is the truth.
Mm.
And I think most of the time, what was building in my head, I was like I was looking at the way the truth was presented,
Yeah.
and I wanted these people who are presenting the truth to defend it for themselves, because I saw them falling and they were having the truth. I was
Yeah.
not expecting them to falling. And
Yeah.
one thing that I forgot was when you enter the faith, it's no longer you who lives; it is Christ who dictates your steps.
Yeah.
And that's one point that I think a lot is not emphasized a lot. St. Augustine said, one of the greatest scholars said that the truth is like a lion. Release it and it will defend itself. So I think the truth is Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
So when Jesus Christ is released into the universe, there's no point of trying to defend him. Jesus
Yeah.
Christ will defend himself.
Yeah.
And I think when I came to that realization, I think it's that one of the times that my eyes actually opened.
Yeah.
And when I experienced the truth for myself, I think is what really turned everything around for myself. I know I've not gotten into how I encountered the truth, but
Yeah.
I think that is one of the things that for me personally should be emphasized.
Yeah.
You first need to encounter this Jesus Christ, so that I believe throughout my study of the scriptures, nobody has ever encountered Jesus and remained the same.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so if you don't encounter Jesus Christ, I think all these are going to be stocks, all these are going to be stories, all these are going to be, scriptures.
Yeah.
But until you have a personal encounter with him, I think it's going to be very difficult to convince somebody to walk out of it. So going back to your question,
Yes.
how I encountered Jesus Christ. I actually got saved so many times that I don't remember. the person who led me to Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think the first time, the one that I could remember, I think it was around 2017 or 2016. I was in high school.
Yeah.
And this man of God came. He preached the word, and I felt a conviction. I went ahead.
Yeah.
And I accepted Jesus Christ. And then he went out. We were saved, and then he left us in school. And so from there we knew that we were saved. But what to do next, I think, is what was the main challenge for us.
Yeah.
And we fell off easily again. But still within the same school, another pastor came. He did the same thing, and then we went. So there was this constant call that the Lord, this invitation that the Lord was giving me constantly.
Yeah.
But I didn't seem to know what to do actually with the call, because every time I would receive this call, I would receive the call.
Yeah.
But what to do with it afterwards, because yes, I've accepted Jesus Christ. But what next? It was usually my main problem. And so 2022.
Yeah.
Yes, I think 2022, I think is when things changed a bit.
Yeah.
I went for a crusade somewhere, and the altar call was given.
Yeah.
And after the altar call was given, I again accepted Jesus Christ. I think it was my 4th time now accepting Jesus Christ. Sometimes in my head I'm like, maybe Jesus Christ is tired of this guy, because every time he's extending a hand and I'm accepting.
Yeah.
And so I accepted this call, and he mentioned something that you need to look for a Bible believing church, so that
that's the preacher.
Yes, the preacher mentioned it. And so I tried to follow. I followed that step. And so I looked for a church. At that time I was in Gure. I looked for a church in Gure.
Yeah.
I started fellowshipping there. But still I felt there was still something which was missing. I don't know what I was looking.
Yeah.
But one thing that turned me off or chased me away from that place is when I stepped in that place. I saw I did not fit in, because the population was not my peers. I was not seeing my age mates there.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's a wrong thing, but I felt no. I cannot. These are my mothers, my grandparents. We are here together with them worshiping the Lord, but I cannot seem to find people who are my peers. What is wrong?
Yeah.
And so I was having a lot of questions. So I felt I did not fit in. Then I came out of that place, and then I think we were at one funeral.
Yeah.
We were having a conversation with Brother Banang. We were having a conversation with him at a funeral place.
Yeah.
You can see how the Lord works.
Yeah.
At a funeral place, we talked, we had a conversation. Then he told me about Bethel, house of prayer.
Yeah.
And in that same funeral, I find out that actually we were related to him, and and it was we have been distant for a long time, but he seemed to have remembered me.
Yeah.
But the most important thing, he pointed me to Bethel. I came to Bethel, and wow, it was very amazing. And then my stay in that time was very brief. I fellowship here a few times, and then I went to Nairobi.
Yeah.
So when I went to Nairobi, I could say I was half-baked. I was believing, but I was also not believing, because there were things that I had not yet let go. I went back to Nairobi. I started school. And one thing that when you are in campus in a place like Nairobi, drugs and girls, oh my goodness. For me, I'm not a kind of person of drugs and everything. I'm a person who enjoys being in company of ladies and all this. And so it was a weakness that was not dealt with. And I think it haunted me when I went to Nairobi. Because the devil knew, like, okay, this person, he has found something, but let me distract him with this thing that he has not dealt with. And so that became my distraction. Interacting with ladies, all this. And so I lost focus.
The direction,
on what I was supposed to be doing. Because my resolve that year was I was going to find the Lord. I'm going to look for a place where I'm going to grow spiritually. And then in February I go to Nairobi, and then all that goes because of other things that I was engaged in. And I started university. I started at Catholic. I was interacting, doing other things. And then one Sunday there was a church near us called Sitam. Every Sunday they would be preaching hot music and all that hot music. So one morning I just woke up, was like, why don't I just go to church? Because it was a long time since I went to fellowship.
So if you try to recall that morning when you woke up,
Yeah.
was it something particular that was nudging you, or this is maybe a boring day and you're like, let me fill this day up?
Okay, I think the previous night I slept at I don't know what time. I was just doing things that were not making sense.
Yeah.
And then when morning came, the time I was going to sleep, the people who were around me were talking about going to church. And for me, I'm talking about going to sleep.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, what am I doing? People are talking about going to church and I'm talking about going to sleep. And I'm a lucky person. There's a church which is actually just nearby, few steps away from the house. I said, let me just go and fellowship at least with God, hear the word of God and come back and sleep. I took a bath and I went to church that morning. And then that morning, I remember it was a pastor called Pastor Ezekiel Mutua was the one who was ministering that morning. And he gave a very powerful sermon in the morning. And I ended up feeling, no, this is not the life that I should be living. And so he gave an altar call plus people who wanted to rededicate their lives to Jesus Christ. And I said, for me, I've already given my life to Jesus so many times. I think if I go for another altar call, is to not make sense. So what made sense to me at that time was like, okay, let me just rededicate my life to Jesus Christ and try and see what God is going to do in my life. So I responded to that call. And then the beautiful thing was, after that, they were like, you guys who have responded to the altar call and the people who have rededicated their lives to Jesus, you go to this place. So we were taken to a certain place, we sat there. And then we were given some, I don't know, pamphlets, some papers, we wrote our contact.
Filling information.
And then we were taken to a room. Then we were told, we are not going to live like this. What we are going to do, you guys will have to start discipleship classes. But if you are just visiting and going back to your local church, is okay. But if you don't have a place where you can fellowship with, it was like that your search has come to an end. I actually I will never forget that slogan. They say that if you do not have a church where you fellowship, today your search has come to an end. And then it was like, you repeat it. I was like, today my search has come to an end. So it was nice. And then we were taken to that room. And then we were put under somebody. He was called Timothy. He's still, I think, with the team. He was discipling them. Timothy plus Madam Dorothy were put under them to be discipled by them. But the challenge was, the thing was, the discipleship was only on Sundays. And so you could
have some 6 other days
to do other things. And then but what kept me on track actually were that there were materials that were given, things you needed to do during the week. And so I think that in a way kept me sane, because I knew, okay, I'm in discipleship class, and according to my assignment, I'm supposed to be doing 1, 2. And so in a way, it kept me thinking and focused on God in the course of the week because of the assignment that I had to do. So it helped me in a way to stay a bit, to remember God during the week more than other times, because other times I'll remember Him only on Sundays. So we were encouraged to start reading our Bibles, and we were given Bible verses to recite. So it was very important. You need to interact with this Bible so that you can memorize this. So when Sunday comes, you are not blank. And so they started engaging us slowly by slowly, and I think it helped me in a way. But still, I had not let go of some things, because in my community, in a way, I was given some responsibilities, and so there were some privileges that I was having. And sometimes, when you have some privileges, there are some things that usually come with those privileges, because I was part of the leadership of the youth, our area youth, and most of the times when there are events, you want to fit in with, you want the other youth to like you, so you do things that are compromising. that compromise your faith and what you believe in, so that at least they don't say, this guy, this leader of ours is like this and like this, like this and like this. And so I think that is one of the things that took me, it held me back a bit. But the discipleship was helping me in a way, because in a way it was starting to ground me in the faith, and it was also making me a bit, it was now starting to, my eyes were starting to open to God. So that was a bit of how I came to Jesus Christ, and
and why you're here today,
and how I am here today. Yes.
Yeah, you mentioned a lot of things, and some of them is the fact of coming to an experience of this Jesus.
Yes.
Otherwise, if someone does not experience him, they remain stories. And you mentioned something that one of my earlier mentors, when I first joined church, is called Derek. And Derek one day told me that if you touch fire, there's no way that you will not be burnt.
Yes.
And so he says, in the same manner, if you meet God, how do you remain the same?
You cannot.
And he as well takes that from a quotation that is in Proverbs and says, as he who touches a coal, I will also get the implication for it. But that's a point that I believe people need to examine their lives daily. As you became aware of it, how do I come to God and I still remain where I am? And when I say where I am, I don't mean materially, because when we talk about meeting God and never being the same again, many would run to the concept of, when I meet God, my problem should be done.
Yes.
My financial problem should be done. My struggles should be done. Indeed, by His strength, we are able to overcome some of these things. And you mentioned as well one thing that I believe stands on the way of people who come newly to the journey, which is discipleship. And you mentioned how that Brother Banang was able to invite you into a community, Bethel. Now, some people might be wondering what Bethel is. Bethel is a house of prayer. Let me just put this outside there. It's a house of prayer, and it's located in Dar es Salaam. It's just opposite Advanced All-Star Village apartment. Now, it's a house available that opens usually in the morning, 7 a.m. up until 7 p.m. But in the future, it's going to be 24 hours open, where people will be praising and also singing, of course, worship to the Lord. So it was until he was introduced to such a community. And one of the things that is so vivid about the community at Bethel is the studies of the word. It's at least one thing that will ground you, and you're like, wow. What was I living before I came here? So I can imagine such privilege that you got when you found it. But also you did mention the component of people pleasing. You want to fit in. And strangely, yesterday, we talked about this one. And let me ask it in this sense. Tell me, yesterday you told me something, which is about people pleasing. I was doing my own thing, and you're like, hey, can I disturb you for a little bit? I'm like, yeah, you can. And so then you come and you open up about something. Yesterday in your secret place, what was the Lord dealing with you?
Wow. First of all, one thing that I want to mention is God speaks to people and God knows the hearts of men. I think most of the time when we study the scriptures and we see that the hearts or the intentions of men are not hidden to God. Sometimes I think now goes back again to the point where when you have not experienced that God can search your heart and can see what is in it. I think sometimes you are not really convicted of some of those scriptures that talk about God searching the hearts of men. And for me, one prayer that I've been having was like God to reveal to me these things that are within me, some that I'm aware of, and some that I'm not aware of. And yesterday I was praying and I was shocked. I was shocked because God revealed to me that there's this issue of people pleasing and selfishness. These are two things that I've not yet dealt with. And I was asking God, how am I a people pleaser? How am I selfish? Because for me, I do not see it actually. Okay, in some sense, I see it because there are some instances where I do things motivated by, let me do this And then later I realized, okay, I did this so that this person can react like this, or I can get 1, 2, and 3. But most of the times, I don't know really. Okay, in this time that I've started working seriously with Christ, there are some things that I do that I'm not really aware of, that they indicate that I'm a people's pleaser. And so yesterday the Lord really revealed it to me. And I came to you specifically. Why? Because the other time when we did the exercise, the Lord revealed to you that there's a discipline that is taking me.
Okay.
And that's why I came to you, because that was a revelation actually to you. And so I realized that I'm a people's pleaser. And I wanted to understand this thing in depth. And I think I'm still in the journey of trying to understand what it means really.
Now, yesterday you mentioned something very important, which is that it occurs to you, or while you were thinking and meditating, God was able to tell you that someone who is concerned about pleasing people, it's most likely to disobey God. And that was a very important thing that I mentioned to you yesterday. When you mentioned it, I'm like, exactly. That's a key point that he has just brought out.
True. That is really, that is true. Actually, that is how he opened my actually. That most of the time when I don't please him, I've displeased him. Displeasing him, meaning I've pleased somebody else, but the price is displeasing God. And I think that is one of the motivations of us. We want to please men, but we forget that the consequence of it, we are displeasing God in the end. And so I think that is what makes it wrong actually. Because when God is displeased in the middle of it, I think that is what makes it a sin. But that is what he revealed to me actually.
And I did remember reading some verses yesterday, and it's taken from the book of Galatians. It's Galatians 1 verses 10, and it's really Paul. So that I bring the scenario well, and we're also on the same page, so others who might not know. Paul was writing to the Galatians, and the Galatians were divided, and they were struggling among two groups of ideas. One, Paul says, some other group that is corrupting the gospel of the Lord, and he wants them. Now, in verses 10, he makes a very, very profound statement. He says that, For do I now persuade men, or God, or do I seek to please men? And he says that, for if I yet pleased men, I should not be the servant of Christ. And that's a very key verse there that I think can also be used in reference to the matter at hand. Many times when we seek to please people, and especially of our age, where we live in, you're very, very likely to go against the very attribute of God. And like Paul was asking the Galatians, he was like, do I seek to please men? And he concludes and says that if I am yet seeking to please men, then I should not be a servant of Christ. And I think we can also think about the implication of that statement of Paul and say that if my pursuit is that I may please men, then I should cry, I should weep, because I am Satan, that there are times when I'll not be able to please God. But the inverse is also true. If you have set yourself to please God, you will annoy certain men. And that's the fact that we cannot throw away. It's there, it's the cost. But as you mentioned, at the end of the day, Paul says, judge it yourself. It was Peter rather. Peter was speaking to the rulers, and they were warned not to speak in the name of the Lord. And he says, you judge yourself if we should please men, or if we should obey men, which are the men that were there, or we should please God. But it is evident whom they were seeking to please. They wanted to please God. That's why when they got out, they were able to preach, and then they got into a couple of things as well. And when they got into that problem, they were still rebuked. They annoyed the men,
Yes.
Because the men said, don't do this. But they went against the word of the men. And of course, it's not always that when we seek to please God, we'll be able to displease man.
Yeah.
But the trap that the Lord was able to reveal to you is that someone should be very, very mindful in their relations with people. And if ever a time comes when you have to choose between God and people, pleasing God and pleasing men, make your call very straight.
Yes.
And your call should be that you should seek to please God.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons that and the advantages that we have in pleasing God is because whatever we do in the pursuit of God and in the fulfillment of the will of the Lord upon our lives, at the end of the day, it profits everyone around us.
Yes.
And we did talk much about this yesterday. But I think up until this point, Kimo, I'll have you again. It's good to see you, my brother, and
Yes,
continue steadfast, definitely in the walk.
Yes.
As the Lord continues to teach you, we'll be engaging much more in some other conversations in the future. But for those who are watching us online, definitely you can be able to as well get in contact with us if you're interested in this community. We are people simply who seek to know the Lord more, and that's what we want. Experiencing who He is, and at the same time, bringing others to know the same things that we have been taught by the Lord God Almighty. My name is Boboto. Behind the scenes is Peter, Aliyah, Sami, Bruno, and Kimo right in front of the camera together with me. Thank you so much, brother, for coming.